The transmission crackled through the ancient comm system of Final Frontier fixes, interrupting the usual cacophony of metal, grinding against metal, and the hiss of plasma torches. Milo Reeves, owner of the struggling repair shop, wiped his oil-stained hands on an equally stained rag and squinted at the holographic display. The message was encrypted, unusual for their typical clientele of smugglers and freight haulers. "Government contract," he muttered, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. 21 days, full restoration, exterior and engines, triple our usual rate. Vex, the hulking shell engineer, snorted from beneath the chassis of a rusted freighter. "Government? Out here at Epsilon? Must be desperate." Outpost Epsilon was hardly more than a way station, perched on the edge of 3 underused hyperspace tunnels, its hangars weathered by decades of sandstorms and neglect. Final Frontier fixes occupied the largest of these hangars, not because business was booming, but because no one else wanted the space with its leaking roof and fluctuating gravity. "Credits are credits," Milo replied, already calculating how much of their debt to Big Eddie they could clear with this job. "And we need them." Doc, their systems specialist, peered over Milo's shoulder at the contract details, his cybernetic eye whirring as it focused. "Historical Preservation Project. Interesting. Says they want original specifications maintained where possible." "Boring," declared Piper, their apprentice, her magenta hair bouncing as she hopped down from a stack of parts. At 19, she was the newest addition to their team, but her intuitive understanding of machinery had quickly made her indispensable. "I bet it's some senator's vintage cruiser they wrecked at a party." Milo's finger hovered over the acceptance button. Something about the contract felt off. The secrecy, the urgency, the unusual specifications. But the credit transfer preview showed enough zeros to solve all their immediate problems. "We're taking it," he decided, pressing his thumb to the scanner. "Delivery tomorrow at 800. Let's clear Bay 3. None of them could have guessed that with that simple action. They were about to become entangled in a web of imperial secrets, ancient technology, and a revolution that would reshape the known galaxy. The delivery arrived with none of the pomp one might expect from a government contract. A single, unmarked transport ship descended through Epsilon's thin atmosphere, landing with a whine of overtaxed engines. Its pilot, a stern woman in a nondescript gray uniform, handed Milo a standard datapad. "Sign here," she said. "Confidentiality clause is standard. Don't try to breach it." The cargo bay doors slid open to reveal their project, and the team fell silent. What lay before them was not a senator's luxury yacht, or even a military vessel, at least not one they recognized. It appeared to be an ancient ship, its hull blackened in places, its design unlike anything in current catalogs. "This is historical, all right," Vex muttered, running a hand along the scarred exterior. "Haven't seen construction like this outside of museum hollows." The delivery agent cleared her throat. "The Department of Historical Preservation expects regular updates. A representative will visit periodically to assess progress. 21 days, as agreed." Without another word, she boarded the transport and departed, leaving the team alone with their mysterious new project. Milo circled the vessel, a strange feeling of unease growing in his gut. "All right. Let's do this by the book. Doc, systems assessment. Vex, hull integrity. Piper, catalog everything before we start disassembly. I want detailed scans of every component." As the team dispersed to their tasks, none of them noticed the small, blinking device attached to the underside of the ship's hull, nor the fresh scorch marks partially disguised among the older damage. Doc was the first to voice what they were all beginning to suspect. 3 days into the project, he called the team together in the makeshift office at the back of the hangar. "This isn't right," he said, spreading out schematics on the cluttered desk. "I've cross-referenced every historical database I can access. Nothing matches this engine configuration. It's advanced." Vex nodded, arms crossed over his massive chest. Hull's the same. Materials analysis shows composites that shouldn't exist in a vessel this old. And those weapon mounts I found, they've been disguised. But they're military grade. Recent military grade. Piper bounced on her toes, excitement overriding caution. And I found something else. Come see. She led them back to the ship, crawling beneath a partially removed panel. The others followed, Milo grunting as he squeezed his frame into the tight space. There, Piper pointed, her light illuminating a small, metallic cube embedded in the ship's frame. It pulsed with a faint blue glow that seemed to intensify as they watched. Don't touch it, Doc warned. But Piper had already reached out, her fingers brushing the surface of the cube. The effect was immediate. The cube's glow brightened dramatically, and a holographic display erupted from its surface, filling the cramped space with light. For a brief moment, they glimpsed a control room, officers in uniforms they didn't recognize, and at the center, a man whose face was known throughout the galaxy, Emperor Darien. The hologram vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving them in stunned silence. Was that? Vex began. The Emperor, Milo finished, his voice barely above a whisper. We're working on the Emperor's ship. The implications hit them all at once. Emperor Darien's reign was not known for its mercy or forgiveness. His empire spanned dozens of systems, maintained through a combination of military might and ruthless suppression of dissent. And now, somehow, they had his personal vessel in their hangar. This isn't a historical preservation project, Doc said. This is something else entirely. We need to call the agent, Vex suggested. Tell them there's been a mistake. Milo shook his head. And say what? That we snooped around their classified project? That we accidentally activated some kind of secured Imperial technology? They'd have us disappeared faster than you can say treason. Piper's earlier excitement had vanished, replaced by pale-faced worry. What do we do? Milo took a deep breath, his mind racing through options, each worse than the last. We do the job. We fix the ship, exactly as contracted. We don't ask questions. We don't talk about what we've seen. And we pray to whatever you believe in, that we get paid, and they leave us alone. The atmosphere in the hangar changed after that discovery. Where before, there had been the usual banter and music blaring from makeshift speakers. Now the team worked in tense silence, jumping at every unexpected sound. The pressure only increased when, on the fifth day, the promised representative from the Department of Historical Preservation arrived. Inspector Lowell was a thin man with a perpetual frown and a meticulous approach to his job. He spent hours examining their work, making notes on his datapad, and asking pointed questions about their processes. These engine modifications, he said, peering at Doc's work. They don't match the original specifications. Doc swallowed hard. The original specifications were unclear. I've restored functionality using comparable contemporary components. Lowell's eyes narrowed. I was assured this team could handle authentic restoration. Perhaps I was misinformed. We're doing our best with the information provided, Milo interjected. If you have more detailed schematics, we'd be happy to follow them. The inspector studied Milo's face for an uncomfortably long moment. I'll have additional reference materials sent. In the meantime, proceed with caution. This artifact is irreplaceable. After Lowell departed, promising to return in a week, the team gathered in the office once more. He knows we know, Piper whispered, glancing nervously at the hangar doors. We don't know anything, Milo insisted. And that's the story we're sticking to. But as the days progressed, it became increasingly difficult to maintain that fiction. The ship's secrets continued to reveal themselves as they worked. Vex discovered hidden compartments containing what appeared to be advanced weapon systems. Doc found himself struggling to understand the engine's quantum stabilization matrix, which operated on principles beyond his considerable expertise. And Piper, whose curiosity could never be fully suppressed, continued to investigate the mysterious cube, though she was careful not to touch it again. On the 10th day, their fragile equilibrium was shattered. Milo arrived at the hangar before dawn, unable to sleep, only to find the main door ajar. Drawing the small blaster he kept for protection, Epsilon wasn't known for its safety. He entered cautiously. The ship sat in the center of the hangar, seemingly undisturbed. But as Milo approached, he noticed a panel had been removed from the engine section. A panel they had firmly secured the night before. Beneath it, several crucial components had been carefully disconnected. Sabotage. Milo immediately called the others. Within an hour, they had assembled, bleary-eyed but alert as they assessed the damage. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing, Doc concluded. They've compromised the quantum stabilization system. If we'd started the engines without checking. Boom, Piper said, making an explosive gesture with her hands. Vex's expression darkened. Someone wants this ship to fail. Or worse, they want us to fail with it. Could it be Imperial agents? Piper suggested. Maybe this whole thing is some kind of test. Milo shook his head. If the Empire wanted us dead, we wouldn't be having this conversation. This is something else. He paused, a thought occurring to him. Doc, what do we know about the cube Piper found? Doc hesitated. Not much. It's not connected to any system I can identify, but it's clearly power generating. The technology is... I've never seen anything like it. Could it be the key to the quantum stabilization? Possibly, but without proper schematics. Interfacing with unknown technology would be extremely dangerous. Milo made a decision. Set up surveillance. I want cameras on every entrance and motion sensors throughout the hangar. We'll work in shifts from now on. No one leaves the ship unattended. The sabotage attempt changed everything. What had been a strange but manageable job now felt like a mission into hostile territory. They worked with renewed urgency, not just to meet their deadline, but because each of them now understood that more than their reputation was at stake. As they rebuilt the damaged engine components, a new question arose. Who had access to their hangar? The list was short. Themselves, of course. Inspector Lowell, the delivery agent, and Big Eddie's debt collectors, who occasionally stopped by to remind Milo of his outstanding balance. It could be anyone, Vex said as they installed new security measures. Hell, it could be all of them. Or none of them, Doc countered. We don't know what we're dealing with here. Piper had been uncharacteristically quiet since the discovery, but now she spoke up. I think we should try to interface with the cube. The others turned to stare at her. Hear me out, she continued. Whatever this ship is, that cube is important. The saboteur didn't touch it. Either they didn't know about it, or they couldn't access it. Either way, it might be our only advantage. Milo looked to Doc, who shrugged. It's risky, the systems specialist admitted. But she might be right. If that cube is what I think it is, some kind of AI core, it could help us understand what we're really working on. Or it could fry our brains when we connect to it, Vex muttered. Milo weighed their options. Continue as they were, waiting for another sabotage attempt or worse, or take a risk that might provide answers. Do it, he decided. But carefully. Establish an isolated connection, and at the first sign of trouble, you cut it off. Understood? Doc and Piper nodded, already plotting their approach. Vex grumbled, but began preparing the necessary equipment. And Milo found himself wondering, not for the first time, what had possessed him to accept this contract in the first place. The attempt to interface with the cube was scheduled for the following day. But before they could implement their plan, a new complication arrived at their doorstep. The proximity alerts they'd installed chimed early in the morning. A small shuttle had landed outside, unmarked like the delivery transport had been. But the figure that emerged was nothing like the stern delivery agent or the meticulous Inspector Lowell. Dressed in simple, dark clothing that might have passed for a spacer's attire anywhere in the galaxy. The visitor, nonetheless, carried themselves with unmistakable authority. As they approached the hangar, Milo and Vex positioned themselves at the entrance, weapons not drawn but within easy reach. "Final frontier fixes?" the stranger asked, their voice carrying a hint of an accent Milo couldn't place. "We're closed for a private contract," Milo replied. "If you need repairs, try Hagen's outfit over in Hangar 7. The stranger smiled, the expression transforming their severe features. "I'm afraid Hagen lacks the expertise for what I need repaired." They glanced meaningfully past Milo, toward the partially restored ship. "May I come in? I believe we have matters of mutual interest to discuss." Milo exchanged a look with Vex, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. Together, they stepped aside, allowing the visitor to enter, but remaining close. "I'm Alexei," the stranger said once they were inside, away from potential observers. "And I believe you've been working on my ship." "Your ship?" Vex's hand moved closer to his concealed weapon. Alexei raised their hands in a placating gesture. "Perhaps I should be more specific. You're working on the Imperator, the personal vessel of Emperor Darien, a vessel that, by right of succession, belongs to me." The implication hung in the air for a moment before Milo made the connection. "You're claiming to be the rightful heir to the throne?" "Yes, Prince-Alex, though I haven't used that title in some time. Not since my father decided I would be more valuable as a martyr than as a son." The claim was outlandish, impossible. Prince Alexei had reportedly died in a rebellion 5 years earlier. His death used as justification for the Emperor's brutal crackdown on dissident systems. If this person was truly the lost prince... "Prove it," Milo said. Alexei reached slowly into their jacket and withdrew a small device. With a press of a button, a holographic seal appeared, the Imperial crest, but with subtle differences that Milo couldn't identify. "This means nothing," Vex growled. "Anyone could fake a hologram." "True," Alexei agreed, deactivating the device. "But not everyone could tell you about the quantum stabilization matrix that's giving your system specialists such trouble, or about the weapon systems hidden beneath the outer hull, or about the cubicle AI core that your apprentice activated, showing you a glimpse of my father's bridge." Milo felt the blood drain from his face. "How do you know all that?" "Because I helped design those systems before my exile, and because I've been monitoring your progress since the ship arrived." Alexei's expression turned grim. "Just as others have been, the sabotage you discovered, that was Imperial intelligence, trying to ensure the ship never flies again, or if it does, that it fails catastrophically. They know I'm alive, and they know I've come for what's mine." Milo's mind raced. If what Alexei claimed was true, they were caught in the middle of the Imperial power struggle. If false, they might be walking into an elaborate trap. "What do you want from us?" he asked finally. "Complete the repairs," Alexei said simply. "Do exactly what you were contracted to do, but when the time comes to return the ship, return it to me instead. I'll triple whatever you're being paid." "And if we refuse?" Alexei's smile returned, but there was no warmth in it now. "Then you'd better hope my father's agents kill you before he discovers you've been helping his estranged child. His creativity when it comes to punishment is legendary." With that ominous statement hanging in the air, Alexei departed, leaving Milo and Vex to share a look of profound concern. Their situation, already precarious, had just become infinitely more complicated. When they shared the encounter with Doc and Piper, reactions were mixed. Doc, ever cautious, advised extreme skepticism. "Royal imposters are a dime a dozen in the outer systems," he pointed out. "This could be an elaborate con." Piper, however, was enthralled by the possibility. "A lost prince, fighting to reclaim their throne. It's like something from a holodrama." Vex remained practical. "Prince or con artist, They knew things they shouldn't have. That makes them dangerous either way. Milo paced the length of the office, his mind churning. We stick to the plan, he decided finally. We interface with the cube. If this Alexei is telling the truth, the AI might confirm it. If not, he shrugged. At least we'll have more information than we do now. The procedure was set for that evening. Doc had constructed a neural interface bridge, a crude but functional way to communicate with the cube without direct contact. Piper, whose neural patterns had already established some connection with the device, would serve as the primary communicator, with Doc monitoring her vital signs and Milo and Vex standing by in case of, well, anything. The hangar was eerily quiet as they gathered around the exposed section of hull, where the cube remained embedded. Doc attached monitoring devices to Piper's temples and wrists, his movements precise despite his obvious concern. Remember, he told her, at the first sign of distress, we pull you out. No heroics. Piper nodded, her usual ebullience tempered by the gravity of the situation. I've got this, she assured them, though her voice trembled slightly. The interface bridge was activated. For several minutes, nothing happened. Piper sat motionless, eyes closed, while the cube's blue glow pulsed steadily. Then, without warning, both Piper and the cube began to emanate the same rhythmic light, as if they were breathing in unison. Neural synchronization established, Doc murmured, checking his readings. She's in. Time crawled by. 5 minutes. 10. Vex shifted uncomfortably, and Milo found himself holding his breath without realizing it. Just as Doc was suggesting they terminate the connection, Piper gasped, her eyes flying open. It worked, she said, her voice filled with wonder. I saw everything. The cube's glow dimmed to its original state, but Piper's eyes retained an unusual luminescence, as if reflecting light that wasn't there. The ship, she continued, struggling to find words. It's not just the Emperor's personal transport. It's a fail-safe, inheritance protocol, they called it, in case of succession crisis. Milo leaned forward. What does that mean? It means Alexei was telling the truth. They're the designated heir. But Emperor Darien changed his mind, tried to alter the succession. The cube is an AI designed to recognize the legitimate successor to the throne. It contains governance protocols, command codes for the Imperial fleet, access to the treasury, everything needed to assume control of the Empire. Vex whistled low. No wonder they want it back. Either side would kill for that kind of advantage. There's more, Piper said, her expression growing troubled. The sabotage was real, but it wasn't just to prevent the ship from flying. The quantum stabilization matrix is connected to the cube. If it fails... The cube self-destructs, Doc guessed. Piper nodded. Taking half the outpost with it, the cube contains enough energy to power a small sun. If destabilized, the implications were clear. They weren't just repairing a ship anymore. They were handling a doomsday device. Milo made a decision. We need to talk to Alexei again. If they really designed this system, they might know how to safely stabilize it and get it off our station before it explodes or before the Emperor's forces arrive to collect it. But before they could figure out how to contact the self-proclaimed prince, their security system alerted them to another arrival. Inspector Lowell had returned, a week earlier than scheduled, and he wasn't alone. A squad of what appeared to be security personnel accompanied him, their uniforms bearing the subtle insignia of Imperial intelligence. Lock the doors, Milo ordered. Buy us some time. As Vex rushed to secure the hangar, Doc turned to Piper. Did the cube show you how to integrate it with the ship's systems? Could we get this thing flying? Piper nodded hesitantly. I think so. But we'd need to complete the engine repairs first, and we'd need to properly install the cube into the command console. It was removed deliberately, probably when the ship was brought here. Milo looked at the half-completed restoration project. How long? Doc and Piper exchanged glances. 24 hours if we push it, Doc estimated. Less if we focus only on making it space-worthy and forget the historical accuracy nonsense. A pounding on the hangar door interrupted them. Open up by order of the Department of Historical Preservation, Lowell's voice carried easily through the metal. Stall them, Milo told Vex. Tell them we're in the middle of a delicate procedure that can't be interrupted. Doc, Piper, get to work on those engines. I'll try to contact our royal friend. The next hours passed in a blur of activity. Vex engaged in increasingly implausible negotiations with Lowell through the sealed door, while Doc and Piper worked feverishly on the engine systems. Milo, using a encrypted channel Alexei had left them, just in case, sent a terse message. Ship compromised. Imperial agents at door. Need extraction. The response came almost immediately. Hold position. Reinforcements en route. 12 hours. 12 hours. They could work with that, assuming Lowell's patience held. But as the 6th hour approached, their borrowed time ran out. A series of metallic thuds against the hangar door announced the application of breaching charges. They're coming in, Vex shouted, abandoning his post at the communication panel and rushing to join the others at the ship. We need more time, Doc said, his hands deep in the engine compartment. The quantum stabilization matrix is still unstable. If we try to integrate the cube now, we don't have a choice. Milo cut him off. How close are we to getting this thing off the ground? Close enough for a short burn, maybe, not for a hyperspace jump. The first breaching charge detonated, leaving a smoking hole in the hangar door. Through it, they could see armored figures preparing to enter. Get in the ship, Milo ordered. Seal it up. We'll hold them off from inside while you finish the work. They scrambled aboard, Vex pausing only to grab a heavy welding torch that could double as a weapon. The ship's entry ramp closed behind them, just as the Imperial agents breached the hangar. Inside, the vessel was a maze of half-finished repairs and exposed systems. Milo directed Vex to secure the entry points, while he joined Doc and Piper in the engine room. Talk to me, he said, trying to keep his voice steady despite the sounds of the agents attempting to force their way into the ship. We've bypassed the damaged systems, Piper explained, her fingers flying over a complex control panel. But, without the cube properly installed, we're running on auxiliary power only. No weapons, minimal shields, and the engines will overheat after about 10 minutes of use. Where does the cube need to go? Doc pointed to a conspicuous empty space in the main command console, visible through the open doorway. There. It needs to be seated properly and then activated, but the activation sequence requires genetic verification from the royal bloodline. Milo swore. Another complication. Can we fake it? Not likely. Royal security protocols are generally... A massive impact rocked the ship, cutting Doc off mid-sentence. The Imperial agents had brought heavier equipment to bear. They're going to breach the hull at this rate, Vex called from his position near the main entrance. Whatever we're doing, we need to do it fast. Milo made a snap decision. Install the cube. Get us ready to fly. We'll figure out the activation problem when Alexei arrives. Doc and Piper hurried to comply, carefully extracting the cube from its hiding place and transporting it to the command console. The fit was perfect, confirming this was indeed its intended location. As soon as it was seated, the ship's dormant systems began to come online, displays illuminating throughout the vessel. Power levels rising, Doc reported. Basic functions restored, but without full activation. Another impact, harder this time. Warning lights flashed as the hull integrity was compromised in a secondary compartment. They're in, Vex announced grimly. Lower storage bay. I've sealed the internal doors, but it won't hold them for long. Milo took the pilot's seat, familiarizing himself with the controls. Standard configuration. Thankfully, whoever had designed the Imperator had at least kept the basics conventional. Can we take off? Piper nodded. Engines are hot, but the stabilization matrix is fluctuating. We've got maybe 5 minutes before critical failure. That's 4 minutes longer than we need to clear the hangar, Milo replied, powering up the main thrusters. The ship groaned in protest, but the engines responded, lifting them a few feet off the ground. The hangar roof had been designed to open for incoming and outgoing vessels, but the mechanisms were old and slow. Milo didn't have time for that. He aimed the ship's nose upward and diverted power to the forward shields. "Hang on!" With a surge of energy that rattled every loose component in the vessel, the Imperator shot forward, crashing through the hangar roof and into the open sky above Outpost Epsilon. Behind them, Imperial agents poured from the breached hangar, some firing ineffectually at the departing ship. But their momentary triumph was short-lived. As they ascended through Epsilon's thin atmosphere, the ship's sensors detected multiple vessels converging on their position. Imperial cruisers, their distinctive silhouettes unmistakable even at a distance. "We've got company," Milo announced, pushing the engines harder despite the warning indicators flashing across his control panel. "And no way to outrun them." "The quantum stabilization is failing," Doc warned from the engine room. "We've got minutes at best before catastrophic overload." The situation seemed hopeless. They couldn't fight, couldn't run, and staying aboard a ship about to experience a quantum meltdown wasn't an option. Milo was about to suggest they abandon ship, though what good that would do with Imperial cruisers bearing down on them. He couldn't say, when the communication system chimed. An incoming transmission on a secured frequency. Milo activated the receiver. "This is Final Frontier Fixes. We're experiencing some technical difficulties up here." A familiar voice responded. "So, I see. Impressive exit strategy, though I might have chosen something less conspicuous." "Alexei," Milo breathed. "Please tell me that's you out there, and not just calling to say goodbye." "Look to your starboard side." Milo glanced out the viewport. A sleek vessel had appeared alongside them, its design unlike standard Imperial craft. As he watched, it maneuvered closer, extending a docking tube toward the Imperator. "We can evacuate you," Alexei continued, "but I'd rather not lose the ship if we can help it. What's your status?" Milo quickly explained the situation: the failing quantum stabilization, the pursuing Imperial cruisers, and the inactive cube. "The cube needs royal genetic verification," he finished, "unless you've got some of the Emperor's DNA handy." "I am the Emperor's DNA," Alexei interrupted. "The cube is keyed to recognize the bloodline, not a specific individual. That's why my father couldn't fully erase me from the succession protocol. Dock with us. I'll come aboard and complete the activation." The docking procedure was nerve-wracking under the best of circumstances. Performed with failing engines, an unstable quantum matrix, and Imperial cruisers closing in. It was nearly impossible. But Milo, drawing on years of experience navigating damaged vessels, managed to align the Imperator with Alexei's ship just long enough for the docking tube to establish a seal. Moments later, Alexei themselves rushed aboard, accompanied by two individuals whose alert postures and concealed weapons marked them as security personnel. Without wasting time on greetings, Alexei headed straight for the command console, where the cube sat pulsing with increasingly erratic light. "How bad is it?" they asked, examining the fluctuating displays. "Critical," Doc replied. "The matrix can't maintain stability without the full system online. And we've got Imperial cruisers about 3 minutes out." Alexei nodded, their expression grim but determined. "Everyone brace yourselves. The activation process can be intense." Before anyone could ask what that meant, Alexei placed their palm on the cube's surface. Immediately, a blinding light erupted from the contact point, enveloping Alexei in a cocoon of energy. The cube's pulsing synchronized with what appeared to be Alexei's heartbeat, visible as a glowing rhythm beneath their skin. The ship's systems responded dramatically. Displays that had been dormant flared to life. The erratic warning indicators stabilized, And most remarkably, the quantum fluctuations in the engine room suddenly calmed, the dangerous energy spikes smoothing into a steady, controlled flow. Matrix stabilized, Doc reported, his voice filled with disbelief. Power levels normalizing. Whatever you did, it worked. Alexei staggered back from the console, supported by one of their guards. They looked drained but triumphant. The Imperator recognizes its rightful commander, they said. All systems should be operational now. Indeed. The ship hummed with newfound energy. Weapon systems came online, shields strengthened to full capacity, and the engines, previously on the verge of catastrophic failure, now purred with efficient power. Milo glanced at the sensor display. Just in time, Imperial cruisers entering weapons range. Disengage docking tube, Alexei ordered, taking the co-pilot's seat beside Milo. My ship will create a diversion. We need to reach the hyperspace tunnel. As the docking tube retracted, Alexei's vessel immediately broke formation, accelerating toward the approaching Imperial cruisers with surprising speed. Weapons fire erupted between them, the smaller ship darting between its larger opponents with remarkable agility. Your people, Milo began. Know their duty, Alexei finished. As do we. The Imperator must reach safety. With Imperial attention divided, Milo piloted the newly revitalized ship toward the nearest hyperspace tunnel. The pursuing cruisers quickly realized the deception, breaking off their engagement with Alexei's decoy to give chase. But it was too late. The Imperator, now functioning at full capacity, easily outpaced them. Hyperspace coordinates? Milo asked, as they approached the tunnel entrance. Alexei input a sequence from memory. Luna sovereignty, independent territory. We'll be safe there while we plan our next move. The hyperspace engines engaged, the stars stretched into lines, and Outpost Epsilon, along with the Imperial cruisers, vanished behind them. They had escaped, at least for now. In the sudden quiet, following their jump to hyperspace, the team gathered in what turned out to be the Imperator's luxurious central cabin. Alexei, recovered somewhat from the activation process, explained the full situation. The Imperator isn't just a ship, they said. It's a symbol. Whoever controls it has a legitimate claim to control the Empire. That's why my father hid it away after I escaped his assassination attempt. He couldn't destroy it without risking the governance protocols. But he couldn't let it fall into my hands either. So he disguised it as a historical relic, Doc surmised, and arranged for restoration that would never quite be completed. Alexei nodded. The Department of Historical Preservation is a front for Imperial intelligence. They've been looking for me for years. When they detected activity around the Imperator, they assumed I'd found it. But how did you find us? Piper asked, still fascinated by every aspect of the unfolding drama. I have sympathizers within the Imperial bureaucracy. When the work order was issued for Final Frontier fixes, I was notified. Alexei smiled. I've been watching your progress from the beginning, waiting for the right moment to make contact. Vex, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. So what happens now? We've stolen an Imperial vessel, interfered with a government operation, and allied ourselves with a rebel prince. Not exactly the low profile we were hoping to maintain. Now, Alexei said, you become heroes of the revolution, the mechanics who restored the Imperator and helped the rightful heir reclaim their inheritance. Milo laughed humorlessly. No offense, Your Highness, but we're repair technicians, not revolutionaries. We took this job to pay off our debts, not to overthrow the galaxy's most powerful dictator. And yet, here you are, Alex replied. Sometimes destiny finds us whether we're looking for it or not. The conversation might have continued in this philosophical vein, but a proximity alert interrupted them. They had arrived at the Luna Sovereignty, a cluster of habitats and modified asteroids that had declared independence from the Empire decades ago and somehow managed to maintain it through a combination of strategic location, superior technology, and imperial disinterest. As they descended toward the main docking facility, a breathtaking sight greeted them. Dozens of ships, ranging from small fighters to medium cruisers, had assembled in formation, creating an honor guard for the Imperator's arrival. News of their escape had evidently preceded them. "Your revolution seems well equipped," Doc observed. "The Luna sovereignty has been the quiet supporter of resistance movements throughout the Empire," Alexei explained. "They've been waiting for this moment for a long time." The landing was met with ceremony that made the team from Final Frontier Fixes deeply uncomfortable. Accustomed to the shadows of Outpost Epsilon, they now found themselves at the center of attention, hailed as heroes by a crowd of cheering sovereignty citizens and resistance fighters. Alexei, clearly in their element, addressed the gathered crowd with practiced eloquence, declaring that the reclamation of the Imperator marked the beginning of a new era for the galaxy. The imperial propaganda machine had long painted the rebellion as a disorganized collection of malcontents and criminals. The sight of the Emperor's own ship, commanded by his legitimate heir, would change that perception overnight. In the days that followed, the team found themselves in an unprecedented position. No longer anonymous mechanics struggling to make ends meet. They were now valued advisors to the resistance leadership, their intimate knowledge of the Imperator's systems proving invaluable as plans were made to challenge Emperor Darian's rule. Doc was assigned to work with sovereignty engineers, further stabilizing and enhancing the ship's capabilities. Vex found himself training resistance fighters in the art of hull breach tactics, skills he'd developed over years of breaking into derelict vessels for salvage. Piper, whose connection with the Cube had given her unique insights into its operations, became something of a technological interpreter, helping the Sovereignty's AI specialists understand and interface with the ancient but advanced system. And Milo, much to his surprise, found himself increasingly drawn into strategic discussions with Alexei and the Sovereignty leadership. His practical, straightforward approach provided a necessary counterbalance to the sometimes idealistic plans of the revolution. "We can't just appear above the imperial capital and expect the military to surrender," he pointed out during one particularly heated planning session. "No matter how legitimate your claim, Alexei, your father spent years building loyalty through fear and reward. That doesn't disappear overnight." Alexei acknowledged the wisdom of this. "What would you suggest, then?" "We start smaller. Target systems where imperial control is already tenuous. Demonstrate that there's a viable alternative. Build momentum before confronting the core worlds." The strategy was adopted, and over the following weeks, the resistance began a calculated campaign of liberation. The Imperator, now fully restored and enhanced beyond its original specifications, led these efforts, its presence providing legitimacy to Alexei's claim, while its advanced systems gave them a tactical advantage. Word spread throughout the galaxy. Systems that had suffered under imperial oppression began to declare for Alexei. Imperial officers, seeing which way the wind was blowing, defected with increasing frequency. The revolution, once dismissed as a hopeless cause, gained unstoppable momentum. 3 months after their desperate escape from Outpost Epsilon, the team found themselves back aboard the Imperator, approaching the imperial capital itself. Emperor Darian, his forces depleted by defections and defeats, had barricaded himself in the palace, surrounded by his remaining loyal guards. "This is where it ends," Alexei said, standing on the bridge of the ship that had become the symbol of their revolution. One way or another. The final confrontation was both more and less dramatic than anyone had anticipated. The Imperial Defense Fleet, its commanders having long since calculated the odds, offered only token resistance before surrendering. The Palace Guard, their loyalty bought rather than earned, laid down their weapons when faced with the combined forces of the rebellion and the authority of the Imperator's governance protocols. Emperor Darian himself, stripped of his power and facing justice for his many crimes, chose a coward's escape, taking his own life, rather than face his son and the people he had oppressed. The transition of power was not without its challenges. Decades of imperial rule had left deep scars on the galaxy's political and social structures. But Alex, tempered by years of exile and guided by advisors who understood the practical realities of governance, approached these challenges with wisdom and patience. As for the team from Final Frontier Fixes, they found themselves faced with an unexpected dilemma. What does one do after helping to overthrow an empire? Doc, whose brilliance had finally found appropriate recognition, accepted a position with the new government's technology division, developing innovations that would improve life throughout the reformed empire. Vex, uncomfortable with celebrity, requested a ship of his own and a commission to explore the uncharted regions beyond the empire's borders, a task for which his combination of technical skill and rugged self-reliance made him uniquely suited. Piper, still young and with a universe of possibilities now open to her, decided to continue her education formally, enrolling in the Sovereignty's prestigious engineering academy with a focus on the ancient technologies she had helped recover. And Milo, who had never sought adventure or revolution but had found both nonetheless, was offered the position of Master of Ships in Alex's new government, a role that would put him in charge of rebuilding and maintaining the fleet that would protect their hard-won freedom. Standing in the rebuilt hangar of what had once been Final Frontier Fixes, now expanded and modernized beyond recognition, Milo reflected on the unlikely journey that had brought them all to this point. Not bad for a bunch of mechanics who just needed to pay off their debts, he murmured to himself. Not bad at all, agreed Alex, who had arrived unannounced for a final inspection of the facility. Though I think we both know you were always more than that. Milo shrugged, uncomfortable as always with praise. We just did the job we were hired to do. You restored more than a ship, Alexei said, their expression solemn. You restored hope to a galaxy that had forgotten what it felt like. As they stood there, a new vessel descended toward the landing pad, the first of a new class of exploration ships, built with technology derived from the Imperator, but designed for peaceful discovery rather than war. Its name, emblazoned in gleaming letters across the hull, brought a smile to Milo's face. Final Frontier. Some endings, it seemed, were really beginnings in disguise, and some mechanics, hired to restore a vehicle without knowing it was the Emperor's ship, ended up restoring a galaxy instead.